Welcome everyone to another week of Parsha Mastery. This week we're going to do two Parashot, Behar, Bechukotai, finish with a siyum on all of Vayikra. So for all those people who've been coming every week, or those who've been watching every week, this is a siyum for all of us, that we really, went through something, a mastery of Chumash, which is fantastic. Tonight's lecture should be for the full Refuah Shlema of Avshin Mordechai ben Shana Shoshana, Tova bat Zipporah, and Eliyahu ben Raphael. So, the parsha is called Behar. The first parsha is called Behar, which means at the mountain, referring to Mount Sinai. So it says, "Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Behar Sinai," and then all of a sudden it starts talking about the halacha of keeping Shemitah. And the question is, we're going to get to what Shemitah is and all the details behind it. But why does it have to say that Hashem gave this commandment at Har Sinai? Didn't Hashem give all the mitzvot of the Torah at Har Sinai? So Rashi comments and says, for one of the mitzvot that said it was given at Har Sinai to tell us that every one of the commandments that we have were also given at Har Sinai. It's not going to say by every single mitzvah that this mitzvah was also given at Har Sinai. It's kind of given, but by this one it shows. So then why did it choose the mitzvah of Shemitah? And we're about to get to the idea of what Shemitah is. But the reason it's given is because Shemitah is a very hard mitzvah. Imagine you tell somebody, and we're going to talk about the details, that for 6 years you can work your land, on the 7th year don't work. People are going to be like, who said? I don't trust. Why? I need to make money. Who's going to support my family in the 7th year and the 8th year? All these anxieties. So it's one of the most difficult mitzvot. And not only that, when it comes to our money, we become super, questionable. We doubt things. When it comes to our money, it's very difficult for us. So specifically by this mitzvah, it said Behar Sinai to give you some peace of mind. Say, hey, I know it's going to be difficult. I know you're going to freak out about this commandment, but don't forget, this was given at Har Sinai. This is something that Hashem himself promised. So now, I want to jump into something that if you came tonight just for this part, it was all worth it. A lot of us sometimes we doubt. We have emunah questions. Is the Torah really given by Hashem? And throughout the many classes, I've always tried to bring one or two examples that prove that our Torah is divine. In this week's parsha, Shemitah is a direct, beautiful, proof that the Torah was given by Hashem. How? Listen to what the Pesukim say. So it says, Hashem already tells us what we're going to complain to him later. He says, if you will say, what will we eat in the 7th year? We are not planting, we're not harvesting, so what's going to happen? Hashem answers, Vesiviti et birkati lachem b'shana hashishit v'aset et tevuah l'shlosh shanim. Hashem says, I will commend my blessing for you in the 6th year, and it will produce enough crop for 3 years. So Hashem's giving a promise. He's saying, you're going to freak out what's going to happen. You're not allowed to work the land on the 7th year. You have to take a step back from your crops and just trust that Hashem is going to provide for you. So what happens? On the 6th year, the Pasuk says, Hashem provides enough for 3 years. So why does it have to be enough for 3 years? So the 6th year is a normal year. You plant. It has to be enough for sure for that 6th year. The 7th year is the year of Shemitah where you're not allowed to work. So it has to for sure be enough for that 7th year. So that's 2 years. And then the year after Shemitah, you go back to normal life. People go back, they start planting, they start, feeding, watering the plants. But the plants don't go right away. It takes 7, 8 months, 9 months, a whole year for those seeds that you planted to grow. So for that year too, you still don't have any money from that. You don't have any produce from that. So God is saying, on that 6th year, I'll give you enough for 3 years. Now, here's where the proof comes in. Here's where the emunah boost should have for all of us. If someone was going to write a Torah, would they ever say something so, disprovable? All it took is that, 1 year everyone's like, freaking out, all anxious about this, and they don't go to work and they say, you know what, fine, it says it, we'll trust it. And then the 7th year comes and everyone's starving, there's not enough food, the produce was not great on the 6th year, the 8th year, and everyone says, we're done. This is man-made, this is not from God. But in fact, for centuries, Jewish people, even until today, Shemitah is still accepted, it's still a real thing that people keep. That people today, and for centuries, it was a clear miracle that would happen to them, so much so that they trusted with full clarity that it's okay, we're going to take 1 year off. Why? Because God is the one who controls our plans. God is the one who controls our parnasa. Only God who created the world, only God who determines, parnasa and determines, when it's going to rain and how much He does, only God can make a promise like this. There's many beautiful proofs like this in the Torah, but this was one that we should really believe that, is phenomenal. You look at, other religions, they don't promise things like this. But in our Torah, if it's God could promise things that to human mind don't make sense and are really miraculous because He can fulfill those miracles. So what is really Shemitah? So now that we talked about a little bit of the miracle, it's, it says, Haaretz Shabbat LaHashem. The land becomes like a Shabbat to Hashem. So for 6 years, you work the land, and on the 7th, it's a rest. What is that similar to? Shabbat itself. 6 days of the week, a person goes to work, he makes his money, he makes his business deal, does his stock exchange. All of a sudden, the 7th day comes, the stock market closes, the shop closes, everything closes. And just like Shabbat is kind of, for us, a test of faith. There are people, I have some of my friends' fathers, who it was so hard for them to close shop on Shabbat. Because in their mind, it's like, if I'm working 1 day less, that's what, a 13% or 15% decrease in my income. But if you really trust that Hashem runs the world, you say, no, Hashem's not going to make me lose. Hashem himself promises that you're not going to lose out. So the same was true with Shemitah, that it was so difficult for some people, but it became a test of faith, whether it's going to happen. No planting, no pruning, no regular agricultural work. For us today, we think about this as like, so what, it was some planting. But we have to think back that in that time of, when the Torah was given, and for centuries, the main income, the main wealth, the main business was agricultural. Like 75% of people was just planting stuff, selling stuff. That was how they made their money. So imagine everyone is kind of just relying on this on these pesukim for this. The Sforno says something very interesting. He says that a lot of the times we think success in life comes from human effort. You study for the LSAT, you study for the DATs, and you think, B'ezrat Hashem, I put in the effort, I put in the work, now I became a dentist, or whatever it is. Hashem says, don't forget, I'm the one who gave you the wisdom. I'm the one who helped you. I'm the one who gave you the peace of mind that you could sit down and study. The same is true with planting. A person could plant and do this and become very wealthy, and all of a sudden feel like it was all me. You take that one year off, and you remember, look, even the fact that I'm not working right now, the things are still working out. Meaning that the whole time, I was doing the actual, movements, but who was really orchestrating everything to work out was Hashem. So it's a kind of a reminder to wake up, because otherwise, look at the world. You look at someone who's very wealthy, look how much gava they get, look how much ego they get. This is exactly what Hashem didn't want to occur, and how beautiful it was. Now, the 7th year comes, and the pasuk says that whatever grows becomes ownerless. So imagine, you worked so hard for the last 6 years, you were so careful, and all of a sudden, the pasuk says that the rich and the poor can just come to the land, take whatever they want, it's nobody's. And the idea is that this land belongs to Hashem. So you have to be able to kind of let go. And it took a lot of emunah. Then that whole chapter of Shemitah moves on, and we move on to another concept of Yovel. Very similar idea, and I'll explain how it is. It says, "V'savarta lecha sheva Shabbatot shanim." Then you count 7 cycles of Shemitah. So 7 times 7 is 49. 49 years finish. On the 50th year is Yovel. What's Yovel? So Jewish servants go free. So imagine someone owned a slave. If someone had ancestral lands, so that means land that was passed down, from Shevet Dan, from Shevet, Yehuda, all these lands that were passed down and came to their children, all of a sudden, someone had to sell it for some reason. It goes back to the original owner, which is unbelievable. And when it came to that 50th year, on Yom Kippur, they would blow this shofar, and the shofar was pretty much the national reset. So that's when the second the shofar was blown, that's when everything reset. So why does it have to be Yom Kippur? What's the connection between Yom Kippur and Yovel? The idea is just like Yom Kippur is like kind of a reset in our life. A person, messed up, he sinned, he comes on Yom Kippur, it's like a renewal, it's a reset. So as well, when it came to Yovel, it was like, owners changed, people had slaves. All of a sudden the Yovel comes, like we start from scratch. Slaves become free, lands go back to their owners. The same idea of freedom, return. And it says, Ukratem Dror Ba'aretz, freedom in the land. And Rav Hirsch says that the Torah does not want forever or absolute permanent ownership. Hashem is the one who really owns the land forever. So it's not like, a person feels like this is mine forever. It goes back to the idea of what we mentioned last week about the Sukkot. Why do we sit in Sukkot on the holiday? Why? One of the ideas that's brought down is to remember, our lives are temporary. You could live in the biggest mansion in the world, but then you go to a flimsy, Sukkot to remember we leave this world empty. All the money we have in this world, we can't take a penny of it with us. What happens in Yovel too is that you remember that at the end of the day, everything belongs to Hashem. Your land, you think it's for yours forever, you're going to keep it. You will leave this world and the land will stay with Hashem. Your slave, you're not going to take your slave with you to the next world. Your slave will stay in this world. It's a very deep but very powerful idea. Why? And Hashem says a very nice pasuk. It says, Kili haaretz. Exactly what we just mentioned. This is literally the pasuk. Why? Kili haaretz. Because for me, the entire land is mine. So that is all pretty much the first aliyah of Parashat Behar. We move on to the second aliyah, which is as beautiful, if not more beautiful. Okay? I can't say if one is nicer, but it's really phenomenal. Listen to the words that it comes down in this week's parasha. It says, V'chitim charu mimachar lamitecha, o kana miyad lamitecha, el tanu ish el achiv. The pasuk says, when you sell something to your fellow or buy from your fellow, do not wrong one another. So this is a very famous mitzvah that we have, which is onat mamon. Basically means, don't scam your friends. Don't cheat people in business. And by the way, it says, I'll just read the pasuk. It says, when you sell something to your fellow or buy from your fellow, do not wrong one another. Right away, Rashi says on this, the fact that he used the word fellow, which means like your brother, another Jew, is a proof that well, let's just say you want to buy something, you're having a brit milah in your house, you're having a wedding, and you need to go rent chairs. There's two different companies. One is Jewish owned, and one is non-Jewish owned, and they're both the same price. It's a mitzvah from here to go support the Jew. It's a mitzvah to support another person, because the pasuk specifically says when you work with your fellow. And then it says the alto new part, which basically means don't take advantage of others financially. So this means overcharging unfairly. This means misleading pricing. This means someone is ignorant and you take advantage. For instance, someone doesn't know jewelry. He wants to go buy a diamond. He doesn't know what the difference between 14 karat, 18 karat. Doesn't know the difference. And you say, what is he going to know? Just bring up a random number, tell him this is 18 karat when it's really 14 karat. This is right up, Isur D'Oraita. You're going against, one of the commandments straight from the Torah. So, and then it says, when you go to sell land, this is how careful a person has to be not to cheat somebody else. Remember, we discussed this whole idea of Yovel, that on the 50th year, whatever land it is, it goes back to the original owner. So let's just say it's, year 47. Okay, and you have this piece of land, and you want to sell it. Well, really, in 3 years, whoever you sell it to, it's not going to be his anymore. So that property has a lot less value than if you sold the property when it was only the 4th year, and there's another 40. What is the math? Yovel's every 49 years, so 40, 45, 47 years left. Because based off how many times there is until Yovel, that's how many years the person could take advantage of it. Once you reach the 50th year, everything goes back, to the original owner. So don't come and try to overcharge the person when there's only, 2 years left until Yovel. Do everything, make sure everything is accounted for. And, the idea behind this is two things. Number one is that if you don't do this, you're not really believing in the idea of Yovel, that everything belongs to Hashem and everything has to go back to Hashem. And number two, you're defrauding your friend. So one is a lack of emunah, and the other one is also a lack of emunah, but it's the idea that you're going against the commandment of onat mamon. So now we talked about onat mamon. This concept applies to every single one of us, every single day, how careful we need to be. It's called onat devarim. Listen to the pasuk and listen how powerful the words are. V'lo tonu, again the same wording. Ish et amito v'yirata melokecha. Do not wrong one another and fear your God Hashem. So, what is onat devarim? There's a very famous principle and idea. There's Sepharim written on this. There's so many things that can fall in this category. So this is pretty much what onat devarim is: hurting somebody else with your words. It could be that you're saying everything honestly, you're not saying anything wrong, but it hurts somebody. So for example, you're sarcastic to your friend. Like your friend always comes 10 minutes late to Shachrit. He comes one day early he comes, and you say, whoa, look who it is. You finally came early. You say, I didn't say anything bad. But he feels a little bit awkward, he feels a little bit embarrassed. Straight up Avera from the Torah. It sounds pretty intense. Embarrassing somebody. Another one, by the way, Rashi brings a specific example. Imagine a person was not religious one day. He messed around, he did some bad sins. And then now he's more religious, he's closer, and you come to him and say, hey, remember 7 years ago when you went to this party and you did this and this sin? You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to come to a person who's now, grown and done teshuvah and remind him of his past sins. It falls specifically under this commandment of onat devarim. Insulting someone, giving someone bad advice. I've seen this in real life in our community. There's two single guys, they want to date, and one of them asked them, oh, have you heard about this girl? And someone will purposely give, not the greatest, recommendation about her. Why? Because he himself wants her. So the idea is you didn't, like what there, you could say it's lashon hara, is it moti shemra, what is it? But for sure, what it was is that you kind of what you did is you kind of twisted the words in order to not be honest, but also to not be yashar in what you should have said. So what did this pasuk end off with? It says v'yiratam elokecha. So when it came to cheating people in business, which is onat mamon, it didn't say you should fear Hashem your God. But when it comes to onat devarim, which is hurting people with your words or giving people wrong advice, it says and you should fear Hashem your God. Why? Very powerful. It says because when it comes to verbal stuff, how the person is hurt is often invisible. Like you make the sarcastic joke to your friend, oh, you finally came early, and then you continue with your life. You don't know what's going on in his heart. You don't know if he felt, if he blushed a little bit, if he came a little bit embarrassed. You don't really see it. So you think that, just because you don't see it or it's not felt, that it didn't really exist. But Hashem says, but you should fear me. You should be afraid of me, Hashem your God. Why? Because I know what's going on in everyone's heart. I know what you gave your friend the wrong advice. He may never know that you gave him the wrong advice. But I know that you gave him wrong advice. So that's why in this specific case it says, V'yiratam elokecha, you shall, be afraid of me, Hashem, and you should realize you have some yirah. We move on, and it says, another very powerful idea. It says, V'asitem et chukotai ve'et mishpatai. Ve'yishaftem el haaretz lavetach. So now it says, if you keep my decrees and my ordinances, you will dwell securely in the land. So what's the difference between chukotai and mishpatai? So another very nice idea is that chukot are some things, mitzvot, that we have in the Torah that we don't understand. For instance, we don't understand Shemitah, for example. Like it doesn't make logical sense to us. Like don't work the land. Like for why? How does that help anybody? What does that do? We don't get it. But God Hashem told us, so we have to do it. A woman is on her period. She finishes her waiting days. She goes into a mikvah. Now, mikvah is not to clean the woman. In fact, if the water could be full of dirt, and you still fulfill the mitzvah. So it's not like a physical cleaning. We don't understand what you're doing, so it's a chok. And there's many other things, with the red heifer, and a lot of different mitzvot that we have in the Torah are things that we don't understand. Mishpat, when Hashem says mishpatai, those are things that maybe make more sense. Don't steal. Don't be jealous. Don't kill somebody. Logically, these things make sense. So Hashem says chukot and mishpatai together to say they're the same. You don't have to understand everything in order for you to fulfill it. If Hashem said it, then you don't need to know the reasoning. And look what it says. It says, you shall keep my decrees, my ordinances. Why? You shall dwell securely in the land. The commentaries explain this is not just like securely that no one's going to come beat you up, but it's peace of mind. Meaning if you keep my Torah, you keep my mitzvot, you'll have a life of peace of mind. And we're going to talk a lot about this tonight in the Parashat Bechukotai and other ideas. And the Sforno said on this, he says the true security does not come only from armies and money. It really comes from closeness to Hashem. And you look at this in the world. Don't take my word for it. Go to Mea Sharm, go to these very religious Bnei Brak, wherever you want to see people who are really connected to Hashem, spiritual, and look at some of these people, how they live. They live with such fullness. Small little things cause so much people here anxiety, nervousness, sleepless nights. Some of these other people, they have so much going on in their life, they're relaxed, they're calm. It's because when you have this closeness to Hashem, a lot of these fears, and it says right here, so Hashem says, you'll be secure in the land, your minds will be free. Now the third aliyah moves on to another interesting topic. It says, Ki yamuch achicha, when your brother becomes poor. So first of all, it doesn't say when another Jew becomes poor. It doesn't say when another random person becomes poor. It says when your brother becomes poor. Now it's not really referring to your blood brother. But what is it referring to? It's referring to another Jew. So why does it refer to as your brother? Because if we looked at all the poor people in our community, in the Jewish world, as a brother, it would be much easier. Imagine you're davening, and all of a sudden these collectors that come with their paper, and they're going person to person. And you're kind of like, what is he doing? He's making a ruckus. You don't do, should I trust him? Should I not trust him? Who is he? What's his story? You give him $1. You just want to shoo him away. Imagine if you really felt like he's my brother. And this is what the pasuk says. The pasuk says, when your brother approaches you, he's your brother. He's another Jewish person. It says you should give at him. You should help him out. And just a framework that can really help us, when it comes to tzedakah and do all that. So now it says your brother becomes so poor. What is he going to end up doing? Umachar machuzato. He sells his inherited family land due to poverty. Now, why is this such a big deal? Because back in the day in Eretz Yisrael, Land represented stability. That's what meant you were like comfortable. It was your inheritance. This was passed down. Whenever they gave out the land, this was your inheritance. This was family identity. This was survival. So it was emotionally devastating. It was kind of like a last resort, was a person became so poor that he had to give away his ancestral land. So a person comes to a point where he sells his land. Every Shevet had their lands given out, so he sells it. So listen to what the pasuk says. The pasuk says, "Uva go'alo hakarov elav," and his relative that's closest should come and bail him out, should help him out. How? He sold the land for $500, whatever it was, because he needed the $500. He should go give the $500 and get back his land. Because again, it's so difficult, it's so tough that he had to give away his land. And by the way, a halacha of tzedakah. If a person, this is very good for all of us to know, person wants to give charity. Mitzvah is that if you have a brother, a sister, a cousin, an uncle who needs a tzedakah, it's better to give to that person who's your relative before you go give to some outside institution that you have no connection with. Meaning halacha is straight up in the halachot of tzedakah that we have a mitzvah to first give to the people who we're closest with. So here it comes to it says the family should first come and bail him out. The responsibility first falls on the family. But if he has no redeemer, let's just say he has no cousins, he has no uncles, nobody comes to redeem him, but later he earns enough money himself, he can go redeem himself. He pays back the amount of money, he made some money, and he gets back his land. The Torah wants people to realize that you're not in this dark phase where you gave up something and you never get it back. And it says, if let's just say he never gets the money back and he can't redeem it, what happens? Yovel comes, this goes back to what we said a few minutes ago, and he automatically gets his land back. So the guy sold his land for $500 because he really needed it. 49, the 49th year finishes, we enter the 50th year. All of a sudden, without having to even pay, he gets his land back. And this was a very beautiful idea. It sounds kind of not fair sometimes, but the idea was that this was your inheritance. And Hashem never wanted the land of the inheritance to be given up, because at the end of the day, this had a lot of value to it. There's a few more halachot here that about coming back and taking back your land. It's now if the houses was in a walled city. So there was a difference between if a person owned land that was agricultural. So imagine in the middle of the farms versus a person owned a house or a piece of land in the city. So it says if a man sells a house in a walled city, unlike the farmland, the rule was that he only has 1 year to redeem it. He only has 1 year. 1 year he only has to make his decision, I want to go get back my land. After that, it remains permanently with the buyer. Why is there a difference between farmland and, again, like the city land? So it goes back to what we said. In those days, the lands that they had given back that had the kind of the value and all that was the ones that were, the tribal inheritance was the ones that were the agricultural or farmlands. And then when it comes to the Levim, there's another here, a mitzvah, it says, V'arei ha-Leviim, the ones that belong to the Leviim, those, they for them it was their primary inheritance was their main thing. So those remain redeemable permanently. So at any point a Levi could go back and say, I want my land back. As opposed to the regular person, he has only 1 year. But when it came to a Levi, why? Because remember the Levim, whenever they gave out the land, they didn't get the regular inheritance that everybody else did. All right. It moves on and it says, again, continuing about your brother reaching out to you, it says, "V'chazakta bo," you shall hold on to his hand, and you shall strengthen him, you shall support him, and don't wait for his total collapse. Rashi says a interesting, famous mashal. It says, imagine you have a donkey that's carrying a heavy load, and all of a sudden the balance kind of gets moved a little bit, and the donkey collapses. If you helped the donkey when it was still a little bit almost falling, and you just kind of made the load on its shoulder a little bit more straight, it'd be much easier. But once the donkey falls to the floor, it's almost impossible to pick up the donkey. You get 25 people, 30 people to try to help you. The idea is that in life, let's just say in our community, Chas v'shalom, we have someone who is not being able to pay his rent. Things are getting slowly out of hand. He's pulling his kids out of Jewish school. He can't pay his rent. The pasuk from here tells us, don't wait until this guy is on the street homeless and then say, you know what, now let's go raise, do a GoFundMe, let's go raise money for him. Get in early, jump in earlier, because it's much earlier to help a person out in the beginning than that. And it talks about what to do now. So it talks about loans, employment. The Rambam talks about many different things that a person could do to help. And one of the things that come right after this, the mitzvah, is of interest, ribit. So right away, talking about helping your friend. Your friend is in a bad situation. And it says, Al tikach me'ito neshach v'tarbit. Do not take interest from him. Now, why is Rabit so severe? And we know the rules, there's books written on just the rules of interest. Because you're taking advantage of somebody in a situation where he's desperate to make profit for yourself. Meaning the whole idea is Hashem wants the Jewish people, imagine you have 5 kids in a family. A father wants their kids to get along, to love each other, to get along with each other. But you're not helping your brother because you love your brother, you're helping him because you're trying to get something for yourself. You're trying to make an extra $5, $10 off your friend. So Hashem is saying, don't take advantage of the situation of this guy who is desperate right now. He can't pay his rent. He needs his money to go charge an extra interest on him. And we know it's a lot of rules, a lot of very severe. By the way, the Rambam says, you know what the best form of tzedakah is? Of course, you give the person interest, is finding a person a job, giving him employment, giving him a job. So, of course, you could go give every day $5 to him, $10 to him. But if you help somebody, you get him a job, you connect him, you have a friend who doesn't know what to do, you tell him, you tell him to, I know my friend, is he employing? You hook him up in that sense. The mitzvah is tremendous. So now it talks about a few more examples before we get to Parashat Bechukotai, which talks about, a Jewish person becomes so poor that he sells himself to another Jew. So now it's not just he sells his land, he sells himself as a slave. But listen to what it means, because we say the word slave when we think about, the African American slavery where they would get a whip and hit them. But listen to what it says. The pasuk itself says, do not treat him like a slave. Lo ta'avod bo avodat eved. Straight up from the pasuk, it says don't treat him like we call him an eved, but it says don't treat him like an eved. Don't work him with slave labor. What does that mean? Don't give him degrading tasks. So for example, you tell him, hey, you see that tree over there? I'm going to give you a shovel. Go dig under there, until I come back. And then you go and you go to take a 4-hour nap, and you're just like, let this guy do whatever he wants for no purpose. You made him dig a hole, and then after you say, okay, now fill up that hole. You're giving him a degrading, non-purposeful work. You can't have him say, hey, tie my shoe. Kiss my feet. You can't give him work that's degrading, that brings him down on a low level. And you see that, at the end of the day, Hashem really put a lot of value to remembering that even humans are not yours. It all belongs to Hashem, that you have to treat people very nicely. And it says he's like a hired worker, you should treat him like a hired worker. Don't dehumanize him. And then it says that Shanat HaYovel, Yavod Imach, he works for you until Yovel, and then he turns to his family. And why? It says, Ki avadaihem. Very similar to the land. Hashem called the land my land, and now he calls them, why? Because avadaihem, they're my slaves. Meaning, at the end of the day, we all belong to Hashem. So don't think that now he's yours and you could do whatever you want. You could treat him however you want. And how does the pasuk end? Ki avadaihem, and then it says, Asher otzeiti otchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lo tirdeh bo beferach. I brought you out of Egypt, and do not rule over him harshly. Now, beferach is also the word that we said in the Seder night that the Egyptians made us work that harshly. So what is Hashem really saying? He's hinting to us. He's saying, remember one day you guys were slaves? Remember how the Egyptians would whip you and hurt you and treat you not fairly? So don't repeat those same ways of that. Now there's other rules. If a Jew sold to a non-Jew, that was obviously very, very kind of a degrading thing that we have to try to go, the Jewish people have to go to try to save their brother, try to redeem him back. The family members should redeem him. Again, the mitzvah always falls on the family first. He can redeem himself if he gets the money back. And the Chazal here say is that, let's just say it's a non-Jew, right? So a Jew sold himself to a non-Jew. So now we as a community have a responsibility to go try to buy him back. Because this guy was poor, and it's not even kavod for this Jew to be a slave to a non-Jew. So it says that you should sit down and negotiate, and you should work out the prices with the non-Jew, and you should do this, and you should not take the Jew back by force. You'd say it should be kind of like, Fauda style. You go in, you grab your Jewish brother, you take him out. Hashem is saying, do it morally. And they learn from here is that this is where the prohibition is, that you're not allowed to even steal from a non-Jew. Meaning the non-Jew now acquired this Jew in legal terms, whatever. You have to go pay him for what he's due. You can't just say, no, I don't care. This is our person. Give back our person. And the commentaries comment on here, what's worse to steal from, a Jew or a non-Jew?
Non-Jew.
And the reason why it says non-Jew is because Chilul Hashem. It says, amongst the non-Jews, if you steal from a non-Jewish person, the Chilul Hashem that comes after that is much devastating. And we spoke in last week's Parashat Emor about it. It says, "V'nikdashti b'toch bnei Israel, you shall sanctify my name, v'lo techolalu, and you shall not, make a Chilul Hashem," and this whole idea. And the Parsha pretty much ends off. It says, "Et Shabbatai tishmaru." You shall, keep my Shabbats. You shall sanctify. Ve'umikdashai tirau. My Beit Hamikdashes you shall, keep holy. And they learn from here is that we don't have a Beit Hamikdash today, but a Beit Knesset that a person has. A person should try to keep it as a holy. So that was one parsha. And in the next 15 minutes that we have, we're going to go through Bechukotai. So everyone's with me. Take a deep breath. Here we go. Okay, very fascinating, also interesting parsha. And it says, the beginning, the first aliyah is all blessings. So if you're on Shul on Shabbat, buy this bracha. It's filled with unbelievable, beautiful blessings. And it says, "Im Bechukotai tilochu." What?
It's not the Kohanim.
No, because it's a double parsha.
Yeah.
So because it's a double parsha, it won't be for Kohanim. It says, "Im Bechukotai tilochu ve'et mitzvotai tishmoru v'asitam otam." If you walk in my statutes and you keep my commandments and do them, and now all the blessings are going to come. So what does it mean if you walk? So all the commentators are going to jump at this. What do you mean if you do my mitzvot? And the idea is because it's a lifestyle. Judaism is not just I'll shake the lulav, I'll keep kosher. It's constantly lifestyle changes, growth. You're constantly growing. You're trying to live that this is the way you walk, this is the way you move, this is your life. Then all these blessings are going to come to you. So what's going to happen? It says, "V'natati gishmatam beitam." I will give you rains in their proper time. So, rain in those days meant, their agriculture is going to grow. It meant parnasa. So you could translate that today, meaning that if you fulfill my commandment, my mitzvot, Hashem will give you parnasa. Everyone wants a segula for parnasa. Here we go. It says, keep the Torah, you'll become rich. And then it says, the Rashi comments on beitam. I'll give the rains at the correct time. What does it mean at the correct time? If it rains at the wrong time, no, not just that. If it rains in the wrong season, it rains in the spring versus the winter. That's why we say Mashiv HaRuach Morid Geshem for a portion of the year, and then we say Morid Hatal, because we don't want that there should be rain the whole year. Certain times if it rains, it would be very bad for the people. So the idea is that every blessing can also be time dependent. You've probably seen someone who's pregnant. They say Besha Tova. You should deliver at the right time. Every blessing has to happen at the right time. Meaning you don't want someone to deliver early. It's premature birth. It's very dangerous for the baby. And you don't want a pregnant woman to go too long in her pregnancy because that's also dangerous. You say B'Shah Tova, you should deliver at the right healthy time. A person is single. They say B'Shah Tova, you should find your zivuk. There's people out there who've gotten married too early. They weren't mature enough for the marriage and it didn't work out. And there's people that you don't want to wait too long, where now there's other issues that have the thing. So he said B'Shah Tova, at the time that's best for you, you should get married. Meaning all blessings, in the end of the day, we want it to happen at the right time. So Hashem says, not only am I going to give you the rain, the parnasa, I'll give it to you at the right time. And what's going to happen? V'natati shalom ba'aretz. I'm going to give you peace in the land. And the Chazal say that, by the way, peace is equivalent to all the other blessings. Why? Because anything without peace, nothing else can function. You don't have peace in a house. It doesn't matter if you have $1 billion in the bank account. It doesn't matter if your kids are the smartest kids. If you don't have peace in a community, it doesn't matter how much the community has opening new shows. It's all fights. Wherever. So peace is a tremendous blessing. And then it says, "V'akimoti et briti etchem." Hashem will establish His covenants, make you fruitful. He's going to multiply you. The old produce, the stuff that you made years ago, is going to be enough to last you for years. So much so that when the new produce comes, you don't know what to do with the old produce. Meaning that you're going to become very wealthy. You're going to be very successful. But the blessing only becomes better. Listen to this. It says, "V'natati mishkani b'tochachem." I will place my dwelling among you. Wow, that's pretty deep. The Ramban says this is the ultimate blessing. The biggest blessing in our life is not just financial. It starts with financial. Higher than that, it goes to closest to Hashem. As we mentioned, the closer you are to Hashem, the more peace of mind, the more happiness you have. And it gets even better. It says, "Veitalachli b'tochachem." I will walk among you. By the way, remember how the parsha started? Im Bechukotai telechu. If you walk in my ways, then I'll give you all these blessings. Now Hashem kind of uses the same word of walking back with us. So if you do all these things, what's going to happen? I will walk among you. So you walk among me, I'll walk among you. This idea that how great is it for Hashem to be walking with us, to be close to us, to be interested in our life. We read in previous parashot that, especially last week's parasha, Hashem says that if you do this sin and this sin, I will turn my face away from you. So we see there's such a thing that Hashem turns towards us, He walks amongst us, He's with us, versus Hashem turns His back towards us, when we do sin. So it's a tremendous blessing that if you do this, or you fulfill the mitzvot, Hashem says, I'll walk among you. So that's all the first aliyah. Very beautiful. Then we get to the second aliyah, a little bit scary, okay, of Bechukotai. It says now, but if you don't listen, if you don't walk in my ways, but if you do not listen to me and you do not perform all these commandments, so not listening means you reject the Torah, you distance yourself from mitzvot, you try to bring it down, you make fun of it, somebody else is trying to do it, you say, what are you doing with your life? You make a fool out of the Torah. A lot of punishments happen. But by the way, this is not revenge. God is not like, you stepped on my toe, so now I have to come step on your toe. God is not like that. That's someone that's human. We need to do revenge. But it's a consequence. What does that mean? A consequence is like, what does a consequence mean? It means if I put my hand in fire, the consequence is that it's going to hurt. So if I now do all these averot, what am I doing? I'm distancing myself from Hashem. The more I distance myself from Hashem, all of a sudden, I don't have that protection. I don't have that closeness. I don't have that guard. I don't have all those blessings coming my way. So then it becomes dangerous. So that's what would happen. So what happened? We'll go through some of them. It says that people have fear without a cause. What does that mean? Meaning you will run away even when no one is chasing you. Remember how we talked about peace of mind? So this is the opposite. This is living in anxiety. Meaning no one is chasing you, but you're running. You're always nervous. You're always anxious. You're always worried. And something that's very interesting that happens in this aliyah is that Hashem keeps upping it. And I'll just mention it because these are pesukim and I want to make sure we have enough time to finish. But it starts off that saying that if you don't fulfill my mitzvot, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's illness, and then there's failed crops, and there's insecurities, and then if the nations can still continue to refuse, then there's famine, there's war. Then the Beit HaMikdash, Hashem says Himself, will go through it, I could destroy it. There's exile. And then it ends up coming to the point where it says, and I know it's very scary, but it says to a point where a parent will eat their own children during starvation. It's a very scary idea. But this is what I want to talk about. Meaning, if you look at the aliyot and the pesukim that speak about the curses, it's not like just random. It's all a build-up. It's all stepwise. Meaning, if you listen at this point, you're good. Then you don't have to worry about the next other consequences. But if that doesn't wake you up, then something else. I'll give a good mashal that we can all remember this, and I think this is so practical. And another very deep idea that if you just came tonight for this specific idea, it was all worth it. Imagine you have a friend who's drunk. You go to somewhere with him, he gets drunk. So sometimes if you want to wake up someone who's drunk, you know what you need to do? You literally just, tap him in the face, hey, get up, wake up, and the person naturally will wake up. Okay? So that's sometimes what you have to do in order to wake somebody up who's drunk. You just have to, give them a little bit, in the face. Sometimes a person is so drunk, you need to get some cold ice water and spill it on his face to wake him up. Sometimes a person's so drunk, you need to literally kind of keep smacking the head, wake up, because he's so drunk. And sometimes a person is so drunk that you need to literally pick him up, put him in an ambulance. They need to go and they need to shock his heart because he is so drunk that he's not going to wake up. The same is true with us in our lives. Sometimes, as Jews, we get confused in the world. So we kind of are sleeping. We kind of turn away from Hashem. Sometimes it's very slight turn away. We're sleeping a little bit, like the drunk person. So Hashem needs to, give someone a test. This person loses their wallet, chas v'shalom, a person chas v'shalom gets a flat tire. It says in the Gemara, if you get through a challenge, what should you do? If a person should look at his actions and say, maybe this is God is trying to give me a lesson. So then a person doesn't wake up. He still continues. Then God has to give him something bigger wake-up call. And then the person doesn't wake up. God has to wake him up in another way. A sickness, a loss of a loved one. Lo aleinu, we should never have to go through that. But the point is that God tries to wake us up in easy ways. So why am I bringing this? Because I think this is one of the most fascinating, deep, most beautiful ideas that we have. Hashem wants us as His children to be close to Him. Like every single father, Hashem wants that, a father wants that their child should be close to them. Hashem is our Father. Hashem wants us to be close to Him. So He sends us wake-up calls, wake up. The biggest blessing that we can do in our lives is that we wake up early. We don't go so far. Why? Because then a person doesn't need the big challenges in life. Then a person doesn't need the big test in life. A person will then just, be able to wake up and not need the bigger test in life. So that's a big thing in life, is that if you wake up from the small things, you never need the big thing. And I think this is what this week's Parashat is really saying. God is saying all these things. If you don't listen, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. But then listen to this part and it'll all make sense. Then there's the turning point. After all the scary curses, it says, "Ve'itavdu et avonam." But what happens if they come and they confess their sins? Meaning a Jew wakes up and he comes and he acknowledges he wronged, he messed up, he turns away and he starts doing teshuvah. It says, "V'zacharti et briti," and I will remember my covenant. Hashem says, if you at any point during all these phases, you say, I'm going to turn back, I'm going to remember the briti. What briti? And it says, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Hashem promised Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, I will never destroy your children. They'll always be there. So what does that mean? It means that even after after the biggest sins, the covenant, the briti is never erased. And this is the actual words of the pasuk in this week's parsha. Ve'af gam zot lo ma'asim ve'lo galtim lekalotam. I'll read the English. Even then, meaning after all these things that they've done, I will not reject them or destroy them completely. Meaning that even though the relationship between Bnei Israel and Hashem can sometimes become a little bit choppy, the relationship will never be fully broken. The Rambam says, you want to know the testimony of this pasuk, what it is? The fulfillment of this promise is the fact that the Jewish people are still alive today. There's times that the Jewish people have gone off the derech, there's times the Jewish people have done many, many wrongs, but the fact that today we still exist is a proof to this. That Hashem promised He's never going to destroy us. No matter how things become, we'll always be there. By the way, you know what the Christians say? The Christians say that Hashem became upset at the Jewish people. He destroyed our Beit HaMikdash. And then He pretty much left us, He abandoned us, and then He moved on, to the Christians or whatever, to the other people, and that we're no longer the chosen people. The biggest rebuttal to that nonsense is from right here. The pasuk itself, this is the Old Testament that they themselves read, says that the relationship will never be fully broken. And we see this not just here. All the promises to Avram, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, all the times Hashem says that you'll never be destroyed, it comes from here. So that's pretty much it. The last 2 minutes, I just want to conclude with how the parsha ends off. Now the parsha ends off with a person makes a vow. So a person wants to be holy. He wants to say, you know what? I'm going to donate so-and-so to the Beit HaMikdash. At that time it was arach, which was a certain value. So someone wanted to donate to the Beit HaMikdash. It could have been, he wanted to donate a certain animal. He wanted to donate his house. He wanted to donate, one of his slaves. He wants to give a pledge to it. What happens is the second he says it, it becomes holy and it becomes real. So he can't go back and say, I changed my mind. I don't want to do it. Or you know what, I'm going to switch this one for this one. I don't want to give my house anymore. I'm going to give my thing. The second it comes out of your mouth and you make the pledge, it's finalized. And it tells us how important it is for responsibility. You went up and you made a pledge, you made a promise. This became holy now. So this item became holy. No one could use it. You can't, use it anymore. Kodesh yel Hashem. It shall be holy to Hashem. Think about it. A person comes to shul. He buys an aliyah for $200, and then later goes home and says, I kind of regret. I shouldn't have bought this aliyah for $200. You made a pledge. You came and you did this, and then you're responsible for what came out of your mouth. So, and it says that he may not substitute it or exchange it because it became holy. And even if it came to land, the person could donate it. And finally, the pasuk moves on with even maser. We have other sources in the Torah that talk about maser, that a person should give 10% of their money. Here it talks about animals. But again, it goes back to all our money belongs to Hashem. The Torah, by the way, promises us that if a person gives 10% of their money to tzedakah, aser to aser, the double word of maaser, not only will you not lose out, but you end up actually making more than had you not given the 10%. This goes back to the same theme of Shabbat, of Shemitah, is that a person feels like, right now we just gave $500 to this poor person. I just lost $500. You think it's a loss. But Hashem says, don't worry. At the end of the day, you feel like it's a loss right now. But somehow, in another business deal, you end up making more money because you trusted the fact that, number one, you cared about your brother, you gave tzedakah. Number two, you trusted in this mitzvah. And the entire parsha of Bechukotai ends, Ela mitzvot asher tziviti et Hashem Moshe. These are the commandments that Hashem commanded to Moshe. Vayikra, which we just now are pretty much completing, started off with korbanot. Korbanot were all like prayers, tefillot that a person makes, to become closer to Hashem. Now the Vayikra ends off with dedicating your possessions, making your possessions holy to the Beit HaMikdash, sanctifying daily life, Parashat Kedoshim, Emor, that now Moadim have significance. It all goes back to Vayikra, to one thing. that we as Jewish people, our lives are holy. We say something, our words matter. A person, eats something, the food, you're like, it's just food, it's physical. Who cares what I put in my mouth? But everything that we do has such significance and so holy. And I think in general, Vayikra, the whole book, if you want to summarize it on one foot, it's about, as Jewish people, to remember that we're chosen to be holy, that we have a certain mission in life. And we say with this, Chazak, Chazak, Venit Chazak. We finish Baruch Hashem an entire book where we start with Bereshit, we finish Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra. Hashem will move on to Bamidbar and Devarim and have a tremendous siyum. I will end off in this last few moments with a siyum of entire Parashat Vayikra. Everyone who's here today is as if they are